I'm Aaron Collins, 34 years old, living in a modest townhouse on the edge of Denver, where the snow falls heavy and the silence runs deeper. I'm an elementary school teacher, a job that fills my heart even when it empties my wallet. My life is simple, predictable, and exactly the way I like it. Friday nights mean grading papers with a cup of coffee that's gone cold, the sound of the heater humming against the winter chill, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing exactly what tomorrow will bring. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My apartment is small but organized, filled with stacks of children's books and a few coffee-stained notebooks scattered across my kitchen table. There's an old family photo on the shelf, but I rarely look at it anymore. The distance between me and my parents in Tacoma isn't just physical. It's emotional, carved out by years of being the reliable one, the invisible one, the son who never caused trouble but never earned praise either. I have an older brother, Logan, who's 38 and everything I'm not. He's the charming one, the one who could talk his way out of anything, the one who always got second chances. We used to be close when we were kids, but somewhere along the way, we each chose our own path. Logan chose chaos, and I chose quiet. He rarely calls, and honestly, I don't reach out either. Maybe deep down, I've always known there's a gap between us that can't be bridged. That Friday night, February was showing its teeth with a blizzard that made the windows rattle. I was sitting at my kitchen table, red pen in hand, working through a stack of third-grade math tests when the doorbell rang. I looked up from the papers, frowning. It was nearly 9 p.m., and I wasn't expecting anyone. The snow was coming down so hard I could barely see the streetlights through my window. I shuffled to the door, pulling my sweater tighter against the cold draft that seemed to seep through every crack. When I peered through the peephole, I froze. Logan stood on my doorstep, his jacket soaked through, snow clinging to his dark hair. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, barely visible in the swirling snow, were two small figures. A girl and a boy, both bundled in coats that looked too big for their tiny frames. I opened the door, and the cold air hit me like a slap. "Logan, what are you doing here?" Quote. He flashed that familiar smile, the one that used to get him out of trouble in high school. "Hey, little brother, sorry to drop in like this, but I need a favor." His voice was strained, like he was forcing the casual tone. The little girl stepped forward, her dark eyes wide and cautious. She couldn't have been more than 8. The boy, maybe 4, clung to her hand and stared at me with the kind of wariness that broke my heart. "Aaron, meet Sadie and Jacob," Logan said, his hand resting on the girl's shoulder. "My kids." I felt my mouth go dry. "Your kids?" "Yeah, long story." He shifted, uncomfortably, snow still falling around us. "Look, I know this is sudden, but I need someone to watch them. Just for the weekend, I swear. 2 nights max. I've got some business to sort out, and I can't take them with me." I stared at him, then at the children who were shivering in the cold. Sadie's eyes met mine, and I saw something there, a quiet desperation that made my chest tighten. "Logan, I don't know anything about." "Please, Aaron." His voice cracked, just slightly. "I wouldn't ask if I had anywhere else to go. They're good kids. They won't be any trouble." I looked at those 2 small faces again, and despite every instinct telling me this was a mistake, I stepped aside. "Come in," I said quietly, "all of you. Let's get you warmed up." As they walked past me into my small living room, I watched Logan's shoulders relax. He was already planning his exit, I could tell. But as I closed the door against the storm, something cold settled in my stomach, a feeling that this weekend was going to change everything. I just didn't know how much. Logan left Sunday morning with promises that felt hollow even as he spoke them. "I'll be back Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest," he said, ruffling Jacob's hair, while the boy stared at him with those wide, uncertain eyes. "You be good for Uncle Aaron, okay?" I watched from my kitchen window as his beat-up Honda disappeared into the gray morning. snow still falling in lazy flakes. When I turned around, Sadie and Jacob were standing in my living room like two lost souls, clutching the small duffel bag that held everything they owned. The first day was awkward in the way that only unexpected responsibility can be. I didn't know what kids their age ate for breakfast, so I made pancakes from a box mix I found buried in my pantry. Sadie ate hers methodically, cutting each piece into perfect squares. Jacob took 2 bites and pushed his plate away, then crawled under my coffee table and stayed there for an hour. "He does that when he's scared," Sadie explained quietly, her voice carrying the weight of someone much older. "He'll come out when he's ready." I found myself crouched on my living room floor, trying to coax a 4-year-old out from under furniture while wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "It's okay. You don't have to hide." Jacob just stared at me with those huge dark eyes, clutching a stuffed elephant that looked like it had seen better days. By Monday, I'd established some kind of routine. Breakfast at 7, then I'd walk Sadie to the elementary school 3 blocks away, while Jacob stayed with Mrs. Henderson next door, an elderly woman who seemed delighted to have a little one to fuss over. The school principal, someone I'd worked with before, asked gentle questions about Sadie's enrollment that I fumbled through with half-truths about temporary guardianship. That evening, I found myself reading bedtime stories for the first time in my adult life. Sadie curled up beside me on the couch with a copy of Charlotte's Web, while Jacob finally emerged from his various hiding spots to listen from the armchair across the room. Something about my voice seemed to calm them both, and I realized I wasn't bad at this. Tuesday came and went, without a word from Logan. I sent him a text. "Kids are fine." "When are you coming back?" The message showed as delivered but never read. Wednesday, I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. "Hey Logan, it's Aaron. Just checking in. The kids are asking about you. Call me back." By Thursday, I was starting to see changes in them. Sadie had found one of my old notebooks and started writing in it, her small handwriting filling page after page with thoughts I didn't dare read. Jacob had begun mimicking me, the way I stirred my coffee, or how I organized my papers. When I sat down to grade tests, he'd pull out crayons and grade his own drawings with serious concentration. "Uncle Aaron," Sadie said one evening as I tucked her into the pull-out couch I'd made into her bed, "are you going to send us away?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Why would you ask that?" "Because that's what people do," she said matter-of-factly. "They take care of us for a while, and then they get tired of us." Quote, I sat on the edge of her makeshift bed, looking at this 8-year-old who'd already learned that love was conditional, that care was temporary. "I'm not tired of you, Sadie, not even a little bit." She studied my face in the dim light from the hallway. "Promise?" "Promise." But as I turned off the lights and settled into my own bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what promises I had the right to make. A week had passed, and Logan hadn't just missed his deadline. He'd vanished completely. I was a single man living in a 1-bedroom townhouse, with no experience raising children, and no idea when their father might reappear. What I did know was that Jacob had started saying home when we turned onto my street, and Sadie had begun leaving her notebook open on the kitchen counter, as if she wanted me to read her thoughts. Maybe I was already in deeper than I realized. By Friday, Logan's phone wasn't just going to voicemail. It was disconnected entirely. The automated message felt like a slap. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." I stared at my phone, a cold dread settling in my chest. This wasn't delay anymore. This was abandonment. I decided to drive to Tacoma that Saturday, leaving the kids with Mrs. Henderson. The 40-minute drive through gray February drizzle gave me too much time to think, too much time to rehearse conversations I knew would go nowhere. My parents' house looked the same as always. Immaculate lawn, pristine siding, everything designed to project an image of perfect family life. Mom answered the door with that familiar tight smile, the one that said she was already annoyed before I'd even spoken. "Aaron, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you." "I need to talk to you and Dad about Logan." She sighed. stepping aside to let me in. What's he done now? Dad was in his recliner, watching some football game with the volume too loud. He glanced up when I entered, his expression immediately guarded. If you're here to complain about your brother, I don't want to hear it. He left his kids with me, I said, cutting straight to the point. A week and a half ago. Said it would be 2 days. Now his phone's disconnected and I can't reach him. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Aaron, don't be so dramatic. Logan's probably just sorting things out. You know how he gets when he's stressed. Stressed? I felt my voice rising. Mom. He has 2 young children who don't know where their father is. This isn't stress. This is neglect. Don't you dare, Dad snapped, finally muting the TV. Don't you dare stand in my house and badmouth your brother. He's going through a rough patch, and instead of supporting him, you're already looking for reasons to criticize. The familiar weight of their disappointment settled on my shoulders, but this time it felt different. This time, I wasn't the one who'd done something wrong. I'm not criticizing him. I'm worried about his children. You're babysitting, Mom said coldly. Nothing more. Logan will be back when he's ready, and until then, you can help your family instead of acting like this is some great burden. That's when I heard it. A small gasp from the hallway. Sadie stood there, having followed me despite my instructions to stay with Mrs. Henderson. She'd heard everything. The look on her face was pure devastation, as if she'd just learned that she really was nothing more than a burden to be passed around. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Just babysitting, she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. I knelt down to her level, my heart breaking. Sadie, that's not. But she was already backing toward the door, that familiar wariness creeping back into her eyes. The progress we'd made, the tentative trust she'd begun to show. I could see it crumbling in real time. The drive home was silent, except for the steady rhythm of windshield wipers. In the rearview mirror, I watched Sadie stare out the window, and I knew something had shifted, not just in her, but in me. My parents had made their position clear. Logan's comfort mattered more than his children's safety. Their image mattered more than reality. For the first time in my life, I stopped caring what they thought was right. Maybe it was time to figure out what I thought was right instead. Logan showed up at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after he'd vanished. I heard the pounding on my door first, then his voice cutting through the quiet, slurred, angry, demanding. Aaron, open up! I know you're in there. I found him swaying on my doorstep, eyes bloodshot and wild, smelling like a combination of cheap whiskey and desperation. Behind me, I could hear Sadie and Jacob stirring in their beds, their sleep interrupted by the chaos that seemed to follow Logan everywhere he went. Where are my kids? He demanded, pushing past me into the living room. What the hell do you think you're doing? Keeping them safe, I said quietly, closing the door and positioning myself between him and the hallway where the children slept. Something you haven't been doing. Don't you lecture me. His voice was getting louder, more erratic. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Always have. The perfect little brother who never screwed up, never took any risks. Logan, you're drunk. We can talk about this tomorrow when you're... I'm talking about it now. He lunged toward the hallway, but I stepped in front of him. Those are my children, Aaron. Mine, not yours. You can't just steal them because you think I'm not good enough. That's when Jacob appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, clutching his stuffed elephant. The sight of Logan, wild-eyed and shouting, sent him into immediate panic. He let out a scream that cut straight through me, then ran toward me and wrapped his tiny arms around my legs. It's okay, buddy, I whispered, lifting him up. You're safe. Logan's face twisted with something ugly. Don't you dare put him down. We're leaving right now. No, the word came out steadier than I felt. You're not taking them anywhere like this. You can't stop me. I'm their father. Being a father means more than biology, Logan. It means showing up. It means putting them first. When's the last time you did either of those things? He reached for Jacob, and that's when something inside me snapped. I'd spent my entire life stepping aside for Logan, letting him take what he wanted, cleaning up his messes. But not this time. Not when it came to these children. I pushed him back, harder than I'd ever pushed anyone in my life. "Get out! You son of a bitch!" Logan's face was flushed with rage. "You think you can just take over my life, take my kids? You're nobody, Aaron. You've always been nobody. A boring little teacher playing house with children that aren't even yours." Sadie had appeared in the hallway now, tears streaming down her face as she watched her father tear apart the only stability she'd known in months. Jacob was sobbing against my shoulder, and I could feel his small body trembling. "Look at them, Logan," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Look at what you're doing to them." For a moment something flickered in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe recognition, but it was gone as quickly as it came. "This isn't over," he snarled, backing toward the door. "You'll regret this, Aaron. Mark my words." The door slammed behind him, and the silence that followed felt deafening. I stood there, holding Jacob, watching Sadie try to disappear into the wall, and realized there was no going back now. I'd chosen my side, and it wasn't my brother's. I called Child Protective Services at 8 a.m. the next morning, my hands shaking as I dialed. The woman who answered had a calm, professional voice that somehow made the enormity of what I was doing feel real. "My name is Aaron Collins," I said. "I need to report a situation involving 2 children who have been abandoned by their father." Tamika Lewis arrived at my door 2 days later. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of presence that immediately put you at ease. She carried a leather portfolio and wore a gentle smile that somehow managed to convey both warmth and authority. "Mr. Collins? I'm Tamika from CPS. Thank you for calling us." I'd spent the previous night organizing everything. Logan's sporadic text messages, photos of the kids' clothing when they first arrived, documentation of their school enrollment, even printouts of my grocery receipts showing the food I'd been buying for them. It felt strange, turning the last month of my life into evidence, but I knew I needed proof of everything. Tamika sat at my kitchen table while Sadie and Jacob played quietly in the living room. She reviewed each document carefully, taking notes in precise handwriting. "How long has it been since you've heard from their father?" 3 weeks and 2 days, I said. "His phone's disconnected. He showed up here drunk on Tuesday night, tried to take them, then disappeared again." "And the children's mother?" "Mothers," I corrected. "They have different mothers. Sadie's mom died in a car accident 2 years ago. Jacob's mom, I honestly don't know. Logan never talks about her." Tamika looked up from her notes. "How are the children adjusting to being here?" I glanced toward the living room where Sadie was reading to Jacob, her voice soft and patient as she helped him sound out words. Better than I expected. Sadie's been writing in a journal I gave her. Jacob's started talking more. They seem calmer. Would it be possible for me to speak with them individually? I called Sadie over first. She approached cautiously, but without the fear I'd seen in those early days. Tamika's voice was gentle as she asked simple questions about school, about how she felt living here, about her father. "Do you feel safe here, Sadie?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Is there anything you need that you don't have?" Sadie glanced at me, then back at Tamika. "I want to stay here, with Uncle Aaron. He reads to us every night, and he doesn't yell, and Jacob isn't scared anymore." When it was Jacob's turn, he climbed into the chair beside Tamika and immediately started telling her about his stuffed elephant, about the puzzles we'd been working on, about how I let him help make pancakes on Sunday mornings. "Who takes care of you, Jacob?" Tamika asked. "Aaron," he said without thinking. Then, more quietly, "He's like my dad now." The words hit me like a physical blow. This 4-year-old who barely knew what stability looked like had already claimed me as family. After Tamika finished her interviews, she packed up her papers and stood to leave. "Mr. Collins, I'll be recommending temporary protective custody while we complete our investigation. Are you willing to continue caring for them during this process?" "Yes," I said, and meant it completely. "Whatever they need." "There's something else you should know," she said, pausing at the door. We've found prior CPS reports filed against Mr. Collins in 2 other counties. This isn't his first time abandoning these children. As her car pulled away, I realized there was no turning back now. I wasn't just babysitting anymore. I was fighting for them. The phone call came at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. Mom's voice was ice cold through the speaker. "You need to come over. Now. We need to talk about what you've done to Logan." I knew this was coming. Logan had gone crying to them, spinning whatever story would make him the victim and me the villain. I arranged for Mrs. Henderson to watch the kids and drove to Tacoma with my stomach in knots, rehearsing arguments I knew wouldn't matter. They were waiting for me in the living room like a tribunal, Dad in his chair, arms crossed, Mom pacing by the window, her face tight with fury. Logan sprawled on the couch, looking like he'd been through hell, but wearing that familiar expression of wounded innocence. "How could you?" Mom started before I'd even sat down. "How could you call those people on your own brother, on family?" "I called them because Logan abandoned his children," I said quietly. "Someone had to." "He was sorting things out." Dad's voice boomed over mine. "He came to us, Aaron. Told us how you turned his own kids against him, how you're trying to steal them with lies and manipulation." I looked at Logan, who couldn't meet my eyes. "Is that what you told them? That I manipulated 2 traumatized children into feeling safe?" "You were always jealous," Mom said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Always bitter that Logan got more attention. And now you're using his children to finally feel important." Something inside me snapped. 34 years of swallowing their favoritism, their excuses, their blame. "You want to know what I'm jealous of?" I stood up, my voice shaking with rage. "I'm jealous that Logan gets to screw up over and over, and you still protect him. I'm jealous that he can abandon his children for a month, and you're angry at me for keeping them safe." "Those aren't your children," Mom screamed. "They weren't his either," I screamed back. "Not when it mattered. Where was he when Jacob had nightmares? Where was he when Sadie cried herself to sleep? I was there. I've been there." "Real men don't tear families apart in court," Dad said coldly. "Real men protect children," I shot back, "even when their own family won't." Logan finally spoke, his voice weak and self-pitying. "I was getting my life together, Aaron. I just needed time." "You had time. You had months. You had years." I looked at each of them, these people who'd raised me but never really seen me. "And, you know what? I'm done asking for your approval. I'm done pretending that keeping peace is more important than keeping those kids safe." I walked toward the door, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. "If you walk out that door," Mom called after me, "don't expect us to forgive you." I turned back one last time. "I'm not asking you to." The drive home felt like flying. I called a family lawyer that Monday morning. Her name was Rebecca Martinez, and she had the kind of straightforward manner that made complicated things feel manageable. "I want to adopt my brother's children," I told her during our first meeting. "He's abandoned them, and I've been their primary caregiver for 2 months now." "This won't be easy," she warned me, spreading papers across her desk. "Biological parents have significant rights, even when they've been absent. Are you prepared for a fight?" Quote, I thought about Sadie reading quietly in the corner of my classroom after school, waiting for me to finish grading papers. I thought about Jacob's delighted laugh when I pushed him on the swings at the park. "Yes," I said, "whatever it takes." Tamika fast-tracked certain documents after an emergency hearing where the judge granted temporary custody. The home study process felt invasive but necessary. Strangers walking through my small townhouse, asking about my income, my background, my plans for the future. I found myself describing a life I'd never imagined having: bedtime routines, parent-teacher conferences, birthday parties. "Tell me about your relationship with the children," the social worker asked, pen poised over her clipboard. "They're not just living with me," I said carefully. "They're part of me now. Sadie helps me make grocery lists because she's better at remembering what we need. Jacob insists on matching his socks to mine every morning. They've made my house feel like a home." The children seemed to sense something was happening. Sadie became extra helpful, as if good behavior might influence some decision she couldn't quite understand. Jacob started having nightmares again, clinging to me in the middle of the night and asking if he was going to have to leave. "Are you our dad now?" he asked one evening as I tucked him in. The question caught me off guard. "Do you want me to be?" "Yes," he said simply. "Sadie thinks so too." Later that night, Sadie knocked on my bedroom door. "Uncle Aaron, can I ask you something?" She climbed onto my bed, her journal clutched in her hands. "If you adopt us, does that mean we get to stay forever, even if Logan comes back?" "That's what I'm hoping for," I told her. "Good," she said, then handed me her journal. "I wrote you a letter, for the court people." My hands shook as I read her careful handwriting. "Aaron takes care of us like real dads do. He makes us feel safe and loved. He doesn't yell or leave. Please let him be our dad for real." 3 days later, Logan showed up at my school during dismissal, causing such a scene that security had to escort him off the property. He screamed about how I was poisoning his children against him, how I was destroying his family. Parents picking up their kids stared, and I felt the familiar burn of embarrassment. But then I looked at my principal, Mrs. Chen, who squeezed my shoulder supportively. "Take whatever time you need, Aaron. We're behind you completely." Quote, "That night, Rebecca called with news. We have a court date. 3 weeks from Friday. Logan's filed a counterpetition claiming parental alienation." "What does that mean?" "It means he's going to fight you for them." I looked toward the living room where Sadie was helping Jacob with a puzzle, both of them safe and content. "Let him try." Judge Maria Morales had silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense. The courtroom felt smaller than I'd expected, but the weight of what was happening made every breath feel heavy. Logan sat across the aisle with his court-appointed lawyer, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit and an expression of wounded righteousness. My parents sat behind him. Mom's face was stone. Dad stared straight ahead, refusing to look at me. Logan spoke first, his voice shaking with what sounded like genuine emotion. "Your Honor, my brother has manipulated this entire situation. He's turned my children against me during a difficult time in my life. I was getting help, getting my life together, and he used my temporary absence to file false reports and steal my parental rights." His lawyer presented a narrative of a struggling father trying to rebuild, of an opportunistic brother taking advantage of a family crisis. They painted me as controlling, obsessed with appearing perfect, someone who'd always been jealous of Logan's charisma and finally found a way to hurt him. When it was my turn, I stood slowly, my hands steady, despite the fear coursing through me. "Your Honor, I didn't choose this situation. It chose me." When Logan left Sadie and Jacob on my doorstep 2 months ago, they were scared, hungry, and carrying everything they owned in a single bag. Jacob hid under furniture when adults raised their voices. Sadie had learned not to ask for things because she was used to being disappointed. I pulled out a folder of documents. These are Jacob's drawings from his first week with me versus last week. These are Sadie's journal entries with her permission. These are school reports showing their improved attendance and emotional stability. This isn't about taking children from their father. It's about giving children the father they deserve. Rebecca presented evidence methodically. Logan's disconnected phone, the previous CPS reports from other counties, witness statements from neighbors and teachers who'd observed the children's transformation. Tamika testified about her observations, her voice professional but warm. "In 15 years of child welfare work, I've rarely seen children adapt so completely to a caregiver. Mr. Aaron Collins has provided not just shelter, but genuine emotional security." When they called Sadie to speak privately with the judge, my heart nearly stopped. She was only 8 years old, but she walked to the judge's chambers with the quiet dignity of someone much older. 20 minutes later, she emerged with tears in her eyes, but a steady expression. Logan's closing statement was desperate, angry, full of promises about the man he could become. My closing was simple. These children have already been through enough uncertainty. They need stability, love, and a home where they don't have to wonder if they'll be abandoned again. I can give them that. I already have. Judge Morales announced she would issue her ruling in 48 hours. As we filed out, Gerald walked past me without a word. Mom paused, her face a mask of disappointment. I hope you're satisfied, she whispered. I hope they're safe, I replied. For the first time in my life, that felt like enough. The call came at 2:17 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was in the middle of teaching fractions to my third graders when my phone buzzed with Rebecca's number. My hands shook as I stepped into the hallway. Aaron? Judge Morales has granted your petition. Full custody with termination of Logan's parental rights. Congratulations, you're officially their father. I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. When I returned to my classroom, Mrs. Chen took one look at my face and quietly took over my lesson. I sat at my desk, staring at nothing, trying to process that the children I'd been caring for were now legally, permanently mine. That afternoon, I picked up Sadie and Jacob from school and drove to our favorite ice cream shop. I waited until they were both settled with their cones before I told them. Remember how we talked about adoption? About me becoming your dad for real? Sadie's eyes went wide. Jacob stopped mid-lick of his chocolate ice cream. The judge said yes. If you want me to be, I'm your dad now, forever. Jacob launched himself at me, ice cream forgotten, wrapping his sticky arms around my neck. Really? Really, really? Really, really, I whispered into his hair. Sadie was quieter, more careful. Does this mean Logan can't take us away anymore? Never again, I promised. That evening we celebrated by baking cookies and dancing in the kitchen to music from my old radio. Jacob stood on a chair, helping me measure flour while getting most of it on the counter. Sadie painted a picture of the three of us standing in front of our house, all of us smiling under a bright yellow sun. The house felt different now, not just because of the legal papers, but because of the lightness in the children's faces. Jacob started sleeping through the night again. Sadie began leaving her journal open on the kitchen counter, no longer afraid I might read something that would make me send her away. 2 weeks later, I received an email from Gerald. One line, "Hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Their approval had once meant everything to me. Now it felt like an echo from a life I'd outgrown. CPS officially closed our case the following month. Tamika stopped by with the final paperwork and a genuine smile. "You did something remarkable here, Aaron," she said, watching Jacob chase butterflies in our small backyard while Sadie read on the porch steps. "They did the remarkable thing," I said. "They taught me what family really means." That night, as snow began falling outside our windows, I tucked both children into their beds that were truly theirs now, in a house that was truly home. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. 6 months later, I found myself writing a letter I never expected to write. Not to my parents, not to Logan, but to the man I used to be, the one who believed his worth was measured by other people's approval. Dear Aaron, you spent 34 years waiting for them to choose you. You straightened your tie before every family dinner, hoping this would be the time they noticed your accomplishments. You swallowed your hurt when Logan got praise for showing up while you got silence for always being there. You thought love was something you had to earn. You were wrong about that, but you were right about something else. Family is a choice, not the choice they make, but the choice you make. Sadie calls you Dad now, without hesitation. She leaves her artwork on the refrigerator and tells her friends about the man who reads her bedtime stories and never misses a school play. Jacob runs to you when he scrapes his knee, trusts you to chase away his nightmares, mimics the way you hum while cooking breakfast. These children didn't choose you because you were perfect. They chose you because you stayed, because you saw their fear and met it with patience, because you loved them before you knew you were capable of that kind of love. The old family photo is in a drawer now, replaced by Sadie's painting of the three of you. Mom and Dad still send Christmas cards to your old address. Logan disappeared again after the court hearing, and this time, you didn't spend sleepless nights wondering if you should have done more. You've learned something powerful. Being overlooked by the wrong people is not a tragedy. It's freedom. Tonight, as I tucked Jacob into bed, he looked up at me with those serious dark eyes and said, "Dad, will you always be my dad, even when I'm big?" "Even when you're bigger than me," I promised. From Sadie's room came her voice, soft but confident. "Good night, Dad. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart." I closed the letter and put it in my desk drawer, next to the adoption papers and Jacob's first drawing that included me and the family. Outside, snow fell in the quiet darkness, and our house glowed warm and golden against the Denver night. I never got my parents to choose me, but I learned something better. I could choose myself. I could choose love over loyalty, healing over history, courage over comfort. Maybe they never chose me, but I chose them, and that was enough. That was everything. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.